Okay, I said, my voice calm in the stunned silence. Then I won't marry you. I placed my napkin on the table and stood. Mom, Dad, we're leaving. It was the last thing I ever said to my fiancée, Clara, and her entire family. The wedding, the future, the 5-year relationship, it was over in a single, quiet moment. It had all come to a head just minutes before, at a Sunday dinner. One of those tense, pre-wedding family gatherings where two tribes with nothing in common pretend they're about to be joined for life. On one side of the table sat my parents, quiet, traditional, and married for 40 years. On the other were Clara's parents, retired therapists who spoke in the language of pop psychology and believed every boundary was a suggestion. And in the middle of it all was Leo, Clara's ex-boyfriend. To hear her family tell it, he was a spiritual brother, an essential part of her personal ecosystem. He was the constant smug ghost at the feast of our relationship. I'd made my feelings clear from the start. I'm not a jealous man, but I believe in boundaries. My objections were always met with a condescending lecture about my possessive masculine energy and inability to embrace a fluid modern concept of family. I went along with it not because I was weak, but because I was playing the long game. I needed to see how far she would push it. The catalyst was the wedding seating chart. Over dessert, my mother, a woman of quiet but firm dignity, posed a simple question. Clara, dear, I see you have Leo seated at the main family table. I was just wondering if that was the best place for him. The air in the room went from chilly to Arctic. Before Clara could explode, I stepped in. My mother is concerned about optics. Having your ex at the family table might send a confusing message. Clara turned on me, eyes flashing. The only confusing message is that you and your parents are still living in the 1950s. Leo is my best friend. He is family. He was a part of my life long before you, and he will be a part of my life long after. Her father chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. Ben, your rigid definitions are what cause insecurity. You should be celebrating their beautiful, evolved connection. It was a perfectly executed 2-on-1 attack. But this time, my parents were there, watching this woman and her family treat me and our marriage with casual, arrogant disrespect. Emboldened, Clara stood up, hands on her hips, and delivered the line that ended everything. Let me make this perfectly clear, she declared, her voice ringing in the silent room. My ex will always be a part of my life. He will be at our wedding, at our children's baptisms, at our holidays. That is a non-negotiable fact. If you don't like that, then don't marry me. The ultimatum hung in the air. Everyone stared, waiting for me to plead, to back down as I always had. Clara wore a smug, triumphant look. I didn't say a word for a full minute. I looked at her defiant arrogance, at her enabling parents, and at my own parents' quiet dignity. The long game was over. The structure was condemned. That's when I delivered my simple, final reply. Okay, I won't. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Finally, my father spoke, his voice low and steady. Are you sure about this, son? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. My mother turned, her eyes holding not tears, but a quiet, fierce pride. Good, she said. She was not the one for you. We were just waiting for you to see it. When I got to my house, the house I owned, where she had been living, my phone was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls and texts from Clara, her parents, her friends, even from Leo. They all operated under the same delusion. This was a tantrum, a fit to be smoothed over with condescending lectures. I didn't reply. Instead, I made one phone call to our wedding planner. The wedding is off permanently. Do not send a single invitation. My fiancé's family will be your point of contact for all financial matters. This was crucial. I hadn't paid for the wedding. Her father had. a fact he never let anyone forget. Now, the financial burden of unwinding a massive six-figure event was his problem. The next morning, the shockwave hit. The planner began making the calls. The caterer, the florist, the band, the venue, each one was another nail in the coffin, another massive non-refundable deposit lost. Her father called me, his voice a strangled roar. "What have you done? Do you know how much money we're losing? You can't just do this." I said calmly, "I didn't do anything. I just accepted your daughter's terms. The consequences are now yours to manage." Clara showed up that afternoon, using her key to let herself in. She found me packing her things. "What are you doing?" I said. "Helping you move. You'll need to find a new place." "You can't kick me out. I live here." "No, Clara. You've been staying here. This is my house. Your invitation has been revoked." The facade crumbled. She cried, she begged, she pleaded, saying she didn't mean it. "The time for that," I said, unmoved, "was before you made your ex-boyfriend a condition of our marriage. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." The 30 days that followed were a brutal education in consequences. The financial lesson was the first. Her father finally realized I wouldn't contribute a cent. The final bill for lost deposits was close to $100,000, a staggering blow. The social lesson was next. They tried to spin a narrative that I was unstable, but the story of Clara's ultimatum and my quiet, "okay," spread like wildfire. She became the arrogant fiancé who overplayed her hand, not the victim. Forced to move back in with her parents, Clara found the atmosphere in their house had turned toxic. The veneer of their evolved dynamic was stripped away, revealing the bitter dysfunction underneath. And Leo, the man so essential to her life, he proved to be a fair-weather friend. He slowly, quietly distanced himself, uninterested in being a support system for a broke, unemployed, and volatile woman. While her world burned, I rebuilt mine. I took a trip to Europe I'd always wanted, focused on my work, and reconnected with old friends. I enjoyed the peace, freedom, and quiet of a life that was entirely my own. The final, most satisfying lesson came about 6 months later. A major architectural journal published a feature on a historic theater I had restored, the pinnacle of my career. There was a picture of me on stage accepting an award. It's been a little over a year. My life has moved on in ways I never imagined. I sold my old house and bought a loft that is entirely me. I started dating a brilliant, kind doctor named Sarah. We're building a future based on mutual respect and clear, honest boundaries. I heard things through the grapevine. Her parents, crippled by the wedding debt and bad investments, had to sell their house. Clara was still living with them, a failed life coach now working a part-time job she hated. Leo was engaged to another woman and had made it clear Clara was not part of their modern family. The final encounter happened last month. I was at a charity auction with Sarah, laughing and bidding on art. I looked across the room and saw Clara. She was a volunteer in a black apron serving champagne. She saw me, happy, relaxed, with a beautiful woman at my side, utterly indifferent to her existence. For a fraction of a second, her face crumpled. I saw a flash of pure, unadulterated regret. Then she turned and disappeared into the crowd. What would you have done? Have you ever faced a deal breaker in a relationship? Share your thoughts or your own story in the comments below.